Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much again for joining me on another episode on Beloved Grace. This is my channel, and I am your host, Meron Asnaga. In light of what's been happening in the Black and Brown communities with social injustices and the abrupt death of these celebrities and big figures in our communities, I, am on this episode, want to talk about grief. Episode, it might be a heavier topic, and it might also cause you to be triggered by some of the things that I might mention in these topics. So I just want to put out a disclaimer saying that, I want to have an open conversation about these, but if these are the conversation that would trigger you, I would suggest to be honest, not to watch it, or to put it off to a later date that you feel comfortable and ready to talk about these discussions. Found myself just being completely, to be honest, I don't even have the words for it yet, but to have experiencing somewhat of an anxiety and depression throughout the weekend right after the news of Chadwick Boseman passing away. I have spent the prior days of that week just learning the news that was coming from Jacob Blake being shot 7 times by a police officer, and him surviving that, and just the whole protest and rioting and looting that's been happening. To be honest, as any Black person in our community, I have just avoided or felt like I just was numb to what has been happening to our community. I didn't have enough tears to shed. I didn't have enough words to express to what I was feeling, but I was just all around numb to what was going on around me. I didn't want it to affect me. I was tired of seeing just Black bodies being gunned down, right, by police officers. And so those were the emotions, how I dealt with grief, right? With my frustrations, but not really knowing that I was not properly grieving, right? What does that look like? Our ability to mourn. And so whenever I talk about any topic like on this channel, like first and foremost, I wanted to let you know, as a believer, as a follower of Jesus Christ, my basis of any problem solving or solution is the Word of God. And so in that process, this weekend was one of the toughest weekends that I've had after the George Floyd death happened. So that week was one of the hardest weeks that I've had in this quarantine, of just like really not recognizing that I was slowly slipping into anxiety and depression, but not really having words to it, because I'm still busy, I'm still working, I'm still communicating with other people, but I've never sat down and cried and mourned. But the topic was being brought up, I find my emotions coming into rooms that they shouldn't be, or I felt like they shouldn't be. The reason being, I find myself crying out of nowhere, crying, just I'm fine 1 second and I'm crying the next. And so just really digging deep down into what's going on. So the reason in me making the videos, one, I can be as transparent and as vulnerable as I can be, to show you that it's a normal process. Like, we all go through it. Even as a believer, we go through dark times or hard times, and I just wanted to encourage you to say, hey, there's ways that help me to grieve. There are ways that you can, maybe there are some tips that you can utilize to help you grieve. So the number one suggestion or tips or tricks, right, that I would recommend is that to be honest and vulnerable, to experience the emotions that you have, right? So that can be through journaling, that can be through your prayer, that can be through meditating on the Word of God, to put down your thoughts on paper and just leave them be, and then you don't have to sit down over analyzing and just chewing on information that doesn't serve you, right? I sometimes find myself editing my own emotions as I'm journaling. But honesty and vulnerability allows us to, one, see the true colors of what's going on with our emotions, and two, to be completely honest with the Lord and say, hey, this is where I'm at with everything. I don't have the solutions. I don't have the answers. I don't feel great about them, but this is where I'm at, as like at that specific moment. And so that's one of my one of my ways, or one of my tips. The second one is, I want to encourage you to grieve with community, right? We are not created to do this life alone. And so whenever we're experiencing grief and we're mourning, or we're going through depression and anxiety, for me, the first thing I do is isolate. I don't want to see anybody. I just want to be in my house. I just want to be by myself, literally eating ice cream or or cookies, and just binge watch shows and not really address what's going on with my emotions. But whenever somebody asks me what's going on, or they call me, my first response is just like breaking into just ugly cry and saying, I'm not okay, or whatever, right? And so, but that idea of like mourning in community allows you, one, to be seen, to be taken care of, to be poured into, because at that moment, for me, I was not strong enough to lift up myself, right? And so one of my friends brought dinner this weekend, right? She drove over and dropped off dinner for me, and I didn't have to make food, right? Like I was on the phone with my mom and my sister, and they allowed me to literally weep, right? Because I was holding back my emotions. I was trying to like swallow the emotions that I've had, because I really didn't, I was thinking of like, oh, they're gonna feel bad that I'm feeling bad. But they allowed me to just like cry it out, and I was having this ugly cry moment where I have to be, what the first was like, to be open and honest with them. Like I was open and honest with the Lord first, and then I was able to be open and honest and vulnerable with my community. So that could be my friends, people that are in my community of like believers, my disciplers, and also my family members. And so I suggest you get into a community, because the first instinct is to isolate, right? To be by yourself. And that does not help. Literally, it makes the mourning process and the grieving process even longer. The third thing that I would definitely recommend is, I have to say, I am 25, right? I just had my very first counseling session last Monday. And it was liberating, right? For somebody to ask questions, to deep down and like pull out the things that you've never talked about or never thought about. But there are things that you as people, it's like a hamster wheel, right? We're just like on that cycle, and we keep wondering why we're hitting this wall, right? So emotionally and spiritually, I needed that counseling. I needed that professional attention that says, hey, I see you and I want to help you. And so it's like a tool, another tool in your toolbox. I know in our community, like mental health is not talked about as much, but it's an important topic that it plagues everybody. Like physical health, you have a physical checkup once a year. Women's health, we get our pap smear done, and all of that. Those are important aspects. And so our brain, our mental health needs that, right? We all have it, and so we need to be able to check it up. It's not too late for us to be seen by a counselor or a therapist that allows us to process our traumas, our griefs, allows us to mourn whatever areas that you want to grow in. And so, yeah, that's my third and final tip. Like, honestly, in light of what is going on and what happened to Chadwick, it's like we can definitely see that tomorrow is not promised. We don't have tomorrow to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to, just whatever we have planned. And so what we can do is, we have today, and today let's make a choice to live a life that is honest and vulnerable, to have welcomes and community and other people, so you can pour into their life, and they can also pour into your life. They can support you, they can see you for who you are, right? And then if you need a professional help, get it. We all need it. Sometimes there are conversations that shouldn't be had with our friends. It might seem like we're just ranting, right? We're just opening up to our friends, but there are informations that we might not be comfortable talking about, even with our families and our friends. And so I definitely suggest, Jesus and therapy. Preston Perry said it. That's the best thing. Jesus and therapy it is. And so I hope you find use out of this video. And I pray that you are grieving and you're grieving well, and that you take the process and the steps to make sure you are all right and are healing and being delivered every single day, because I believe that is the will of God for our life, right? He wants us to be fully healed. He wants us to be new every single second. And so let us take all the opportunities that we have to be those individuals, right? To live a life that is full. Like, what does it mean when the Lord says, I have come for you to have life and life abundant? Are we living a life that is abundant, right? And so I pray that you are encouraged, and I pray that your spirit is lifted up, and I pray that you surrender all of your worries and your cares, because the Lord does care for you. Thank you so much for just sticking through another episode, right? This one was another heavy one for me. I even felt heavy while I was doing it, but I just wanted to be a good steward of my words, right? Whatever I was putting out, especially in this topic, something that it's near dear to my heart and I'm still processing through, I wanted to be intentional about the words that I'm speaking and the content that I'm putting out when it comes to grief. And so I'm praying that these tips would help you make the first step, or if you've already made the first step, continue to make those steps to heal, to fully develop your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And so I appreciate you for staying and for sticking through. I can't wait to hear from you, and I pray that it encouraged you and it lifted up your spirit and it empowered you. That's what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to share my experience so you are empowered by this experience, knowing that you are not alone in this journey. I thank you for sticking through this entire time, and I will see you on the next one. Please do like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel, and turn on your post notifications so you're always notified when I post new videos.